Good afternoon, friends, or good morning, or wherever you may be. It's Mike Carlucci. It's time for Let's Chat with our guest speaker. Very simple and clean. Yes, today we have a very nice gentleman, in the business of radio, television, film, you name it, behind the scenes, in front of the camera. You always meet, you get a chance to work with really cool people. And this guy here is a cool dude. He's been in this business for a long time. He's done all kinds of facets in the business, including things that I've done as well, because you have to be a five-tool player. This is a good example right here. He's done a lot of stuff. And I want to welcome our guest. It's John Hart. Hi, John.
Hi, Mike. Are you sure you're talking about me? I mean,
Yes, you did pay me $20 to say all those good
I
things. So,
know, I
yeah.
know.
Actually, the price went up because the interest rate went up. So it's going to be $28 and change. So anyway, John, so good to have you. I know we're both on a tight schedule, so we'll go right into it here. First off, let's just start from the beginning. Let's, give us your story, how you began and your interest in broadcasting.
Way back when I was a teenager, I went up to a radio station in LA, KFWB, and my dad took me there, and I got to watch one of the disc jockeys on the air, and I said, "Hey, this is for me. This is something I'd really like to do." So I set up a little studio in the house and played radio and played records and introduced songs and had all kinds of fun. And finally, I got into radio, and it's kind of interesting. I lived in Redondo Beach at the time, and there was a radio station just down the street on Pacific Coast Highway, small FM station. So I called them and said, "Hey, are you looking for announcers?" They said, "Well, not really, but we do have a sales position available." I said, "Okay, whatever that is, let me find out about it." So I went over and they hired me, and that meant I would go out and sell broadcast advertising to retailers, basically knocking on doors, kind of like a
Mhm.
what would you say, vacuum cleaner salesman or someone like that, walking in, cold calling. So I did that for some time, but they knew I wanted to be on the air, and they gave me a 15-minute newscast to do every night at 6. So I had to come in around 4:30, use the wire service, get all the news together, and call the stock market exchange in Torrance and record that, and then put it all into a cartridge, as we called them in those days, tape. And when I'd leave, I get to listen to myself doing the newscast. And that was my first job in radio. And then I moved over to Anaheim at a rock and roll station, which was more of my forte in terms of music. And then went up north for a couple of years and ended up managing an FM station in the Sacramento area. And then finally saw that radio, I needed to make a change and go into something different. So I went into television, and through a friend, actually a family friend who helped me get into television, I was very lucky and started working on a show that you may be familiar with, The Golden Girls. That was my first entry into television. And the reason I was able to segue from radio to TV is because of audio. And I worked what was called a sound recordist. And sometimes I would ask students in class, "What does a sound recordist do?" And a few timid hands would raise and say, "Oh, you must record sound." Yeah, exactly. That's what I did. So it was my responsibility for the shows I was working on would be to record the sound. And if I didn't do it, they didn't have the sound for the show. So we did special effects, recorded the sound, and really had a lot of fun. I worked on many, many shows. A few other ones you might be familiar with were Will and Grace, Mad About You. And then the last couple prior to my retirement in 2019 was Last Man Standing for Fox and The Ranch for Netflix. It was a great career, went on for over 30 years. Radio was about a 6-year career. So both radio and TV have been part of my life, and I've enjoyed it so much, just like Mike does with his work.
You've obviously met a lot of interesting people. You've become friends with a lot of people, not just in radio, but in television. I mean, some of these superstar celebrities, and I've got a chance to meet some of the cool people that you worked with as well. And it's that must have been all kinds of fun. Who's the coolest celebrity on some of those shows you worked on that you've met and really like, and who's just a good person?
Boy, you're really putting me on the spot here, depending on who watches this video.
Well,
Uh,
it won't be broadcasting on CBS or NBC, so you don't have to worry
oh,
about
let's hope not, but you
it. Or
never
Netflix.
know.
It won't be on
It's
Netflix.
on.
So.
But two of the nicest people I worked with, Jay Leno and Sam Elliott. And I also will mention Paul Reiser, comedian too. He was great. Everybody in those areas, that's super, super nice. Over all the years I worked, there was just a couple of people that I didn't care too much for working with in terms of talent, but they're just doing their job like we are all doing it as a crew member. And we're there to get a job done and get in and get out. And that was the whole idea, but to have fun along the way.
You told me some cool stories about all your little fun, behind the scenes when the shooting is taking a break. There's always a lot of mishmash and comic relief with some of those, especially Paul Reiser and all those guys. You said it was just nonstop laughter. That must be priceless.
Well, Mike, there's not too many jobs where you can go to work, get fed well, and pay to play and laugh all day. It's just, it's the best. It really is. But one thing we did, I'll make this short. One thing that we would do to break up the crew and cast during rehearsals is we would use drop audio sound bites. And these would be just little blurbs from a movie or a previous episode that everybody knows the line to, and it was very significant. And we would drop it just at the right time after rehearsal ended, and we would break up everybody on the stage. And that's what we really enjoyed doing the most, actually. More so than recording. It was more or less breaking up the crew and the cast on the stage during rehearsals. That was the fun part.
And you can always tell some of the actors, actresses that have the sense of humor that would appreciate those little drop-ins and all those little fun things you did. And I'm sure there's a couple actors and actresses that kind of go, "Hey, who the hell did that?" Or what are you guys doing? You know, I'm sure a few got pissed off.
Yes, there were a couple that found that to be a little annoying, but the ones that enjoyed it the most were Tim Allen, Paul Reiser, those types of the comedians, actually. Stand-up comedians enjoyed it because they didn't know what to expect, and you would surprise them with this little sound bite. So it made it all for the fun of working in the industry and such.
I really enjoyed meeting Sam Elliott. I thank you for that when you invited me to the show he was on, The Ranch, right? Yeah, The Ranch. What a great guy. And I was just watching some of the old Mission Impossible when he kind of broke into the business. And I went up to him and said, "Hey, it's Dr. Doug Roberts." And he goes, "Yes." He goes, "Boy, that's a long time ago." I go, "Yes." And it's funny because I went to him and said, "Hey, he's such a great guy." He said, "Hey, it's an honor to meet you." And he looked at me and says, "No, it's an honor to meet you." I mean, that is just soulful and heartfelt, man. I mean, what a great guy. I wish I could have spent more time to chat with him like you get a chance to all the time. But just meeting him the one time and chatting, briefly was really cool. It's one of those things you take with you till the end, So, but anyway, let's move it into a different direction here. So all this experience going on through your career, but in between, like myself, we kind of wanted to do other things because you and I are both creative and we want to kind of do other things. And we kind of bounced into doing the teaching thing. And when and where did you start?
It's interesting. Just after I was ending my radio career, I was talking to someone that I knew here in Orange County, and he said, "You should take that experience and teach." He said, "I know Fullerton College will hire you." And at that time, I didn't have a degree, a full 4-year degree. So I went up there, and the head of the department, Don Depew, saw me, and we chatted and everything. And he was very impressed. And he said, "I'd love to bring you on board for a radio production class." And that's how it all started at Fullerton College. And from there, branching out to other schools. And when I ended up my career teaching here just a year ago, May, in retirement, I was at Cal State Fullerton, Orange Coast College, and Saddleback. And the thing about that is, for you and I, we have taught together at 4 schools, and OCC would have been the 5th had I still been there.
Yeah.
So, it's really cool. OCC is a great school. It really is.
Oh, I'm enjoying myself. The students are great. The staff, the other instructors, the department people are fantastic. I'm having a great time there. So I'm hope to continue on, depending on budgets.
Well, of course. Yeah. So that lasted 35 years. Teaching and the TV work and radio combined was about almost 40. And I'm only 35, so go figure.
Yeah, you got more time. Yeah, I think you should become unretired. What do you think?
I started when I was 5.
That's right. And not a day older, yes.
Not a day over.
So we talked about off camera, if you will. We talked about, the problem with this business is so tough to break into. It's all about timing. I always stress the timing aspect of it. But You had said, and you pinpointed on the fear factor of the business. Elaborate on that.
There's something that most people don't talk about, but it's all ingrained in the back of their head. And what I call the element of fear. And it's brought on by the nature of the business being so insecure. And no one really knows from one day to the next, in many cases, if they're going to be coming back to work. I mean, that sounds very strange, but that's the problem. And really, having that fear has nothing to do with your ability or your work performance. It has to do with just the way the business works. I've seen actors, I've seen not only bit actors or what we call daily hire actors. We've seen actors from the series that were stars in a series, producers, directors, and crew members basically be fired off a show, and they don't really have to give a reason. And that's probably where the fear factor comes into play. Just keep that in check, and you don't let it bother you. Just keep moving along. The one thing too about the entertainment industry, for the most part with television, is we all sign what is called a deal memo. It's deal memo. It's like a contract, and it spells out what they can and cannot do, and that your pay and what have you. And it says they can let you go for any reason. So being what we call a daily hire, which we are, you technically are fired at the end of every day. The only good thing about this for people that are working on shows where they have a hiatus of a week off or 2 weeks off, they can legitimately collect unemployment because basically they have lost their job through no fault of their own, which makes it nice in that respect. So I just say, don't dwell on the fear factor. It's there. I think everybody has it. I've talked to colleagues about it. They also agree with me on that as well. It's not something we get into in conversations on a regular basis.
Well, the element of fear is try to put it in a can, because it'll just burn you up and stress you out. You got to just have other things going on, side things. If you got a hiatus from a show, or either be television, radio, film, go work at Trader Joe's or something. Just keep yourself, it's good to keep the mind occupied, do something until the next gig opens up, that kind of thing. So
you have to have what they call today, the buzzword is side hustle. You have to have something else going on in this business. If not, many people who have written books on it say you need to save 1/3 of your income to live on during the summer.
Yeah.
Kind of like a teacher does, because they're not paid in the summer either. So you've got to save money through the year to live on during the summertime. But
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
It's just something that many people don't do, unfortunately, and find themselves in trouble, particularly with our current state of affairs with the writers' strike, and SAG-AFTRA out on strike has put a lot of people out of work, and they're finding themselves in a world of hurt. So it's another good reason to have a little nest egg set aside, or another type of activity that you can earn money from.
In fact, in the old days, the disc jockeys, because like you said, and I've stressed, is if a format is changed, like it used to be in the old days, I mean, you work at a rock and roll station, and all of a sudden it goes Spanish the next day, you're out of a gig unless you speak fluent Spanish, and most either don't, or, that kind of thing. So you have to be ready. And they used to call it the disc jockey emergency fund. You must have some cash saved up just for that purpose. But now with everything moving in a different technology direction, podcasting and shoutcasting, the whole thing, the adapting to moving into something quicker is a lot better than the old days when the format changes, and then all of a sudden you got to put cassette tapes together, or reel-to-reel tapes before cassettes, and make phone calls and get in your car and drive around all these different cities to see if there's any any work, and keeping that network open, all your friends, and make sure, hey, anything going on, man? I just got canned, not because I suck, it's because I changed the format. So I mean, there's been stations that have done that. I mean, because hey, if the ratings aren't there, they're going to change the format, and it's not because your show is bad. It's just because, hey, no ratings for the entire station. So always have some backup. Have a backup plan, like you said. So besides having passion in the business, the love from the heart and the soul, what other skills you think are needed to be successful in this really tough business?
Interpersonal skills, and that includes being flexible, being a team player, being able to socialize, and really have a working knowledge of the industry you're in. And I think this is something you and I really honed in on in our own personal lives, as we know so much about film, radio, and television because we absorb so much. And these are things where you get into conversations with people on a floor. You don't want to be left out. Students, a lot of times, are not interested in watching films that are older than their own age, which is really sad because there's wonderful films, as you and I know, that go back to the beginning. Many good black and white, excellent black and white films from the 40s and 50s, 60s. They miss out a lot by not looking into those kinds of films and exploring those and understanding who was in them and where they came from. A lot of our actors today, at least of the older established actors, started in television on shows like Twilight Zone and Alfred Hitchcock and Perry Mason and a lot of those shows. And these people pop up. I was watching a Perry Mason not too long ago, and lo and behold, there's Robert Redford.
Yeah.
He's probably about 21 years old. One of his first gigs on
Burt
screen.
Reynolds. I saw Burt Reynolds on one too. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're out there. So if you watch these things and open your mind to looking at things other than just current Marvel and DC comic movies to see what's out there, you will be able to engage yourself in conversations when you're talking to directors or producers on the floor. And this is important because it makes them know that you really are into the industry. And that's really what they like to hear.
Yeah. What about someone really jumping into different avenues of the industry, either radio, television, film, behind the scenes? College degrees, are they really necessary? And only maybe certain jobs, positions in the business should really have that degree, a strong degree? Or what's your opinion on that? Because I know there's kind of a pro and con with the degree situation now.
That's always an interesting question, particularly for the two of us to answer, because we are college professors. And I would tell students, not necessarily do you need a degree. There is a lot of nepotism in the industry. You have people that are sponsored by friends, relatives, neighbors to get into a particular craft. It usually comes out of the crew side, where what we call below the line would be, let's say, costume, hair and makeup, sound, camera work, grips, people that are electricians and all of these types of people. A lot of them don't have college degrees. They do very well. They make a lot of money. But they got them into it, probably as a friend or a relative. And I always say, take advantage of this. If you know somebody in your realm of friends and family that can help you or works in the industry, by all means, talk to them, pick their brain, and get information in that respect. So I will say this about having college or a certificate from a school. It will help a producer. Let's say they're hiring you as a PA, production assistant, which is a entry-level position for many people starting out in production, would be a PA's position. I had one producer one time who told me before he would hire someone, they had to go through a test. They had to be able to use in a sentence T-O, T-W-O, or T-O-O, two, or two, 3 words that sound the same, but all mean different ways in terms of how they're put together grammatically in a sentence. And also there, and there, T-H-E-Y, T-H-E-E-Y-R-E, apostrophe R-E, and then T-H-E-I-R. And if they couldn't pass that test, they wouldn't be hired. His reasoning being that they're representing him with memos and emails and whatever other correspondence that he may be sending out to other executives in the studio, to actors, to department heads. And that's going to be a representative of what he sounds like by the way they're putting down words. So that was really important. And those are things you learn, of course, taking college courses in English and composition and writing. You learn these things. And also, we have to say that with Grammarly and all of these other tools today, it's kind of hard to make mistakes, but they can happen. So that in that respect, being a PA, you probably should have a college degree or certificate along those lines. And I think with the Directors Guild, I think you might have to have a BA to get into their trainee program, as I recall. And that's tough too. That's like a college entrance exam.
Yeah.
to get involved, and you have to pass. Got to tell you one funny thing about that, Mike, that one of my the DGA trainee that I met on one of the shows I worked on, she told me that, and this is how strict they are. They give all these trainees before they go into this room that take a test. They said specifically, do not sit at a desk that does not have a pen and pencil with it and a piece of paper. And of course, they purposely laid out 4 or 5 desks in there with no paper, no pen, and no pencil.
Ooh.
And sure enough, 4 or 5 people sat down at those desks, and immediately they were reminded, what were you told before you entered the room? Oh yeah. Well, unfortunately, you are done. You are out. So you might as well get up and go ahead and take off. So their whole thing is, if you can't follow directions, the simple directions, how are you going to be in a director's position or helping out a director on a show? That's tough, but that's the way it needs to be.
Yeah. That's a good point. Process of elimination. So
Yeah.
um so you kind of covered that realm about what to do, what not to do with the degree, and make contacts, network yourself. I stress the same thing in class. But any suggestions on getting that mild experience to kind of jump into the room is internships? What do you think?
Internships are wonderful. If you can do more than one, I think that's important. A lot of students I've known in the radio side, particularly at, well, I won't mention the schools, but they've got people into internships, but they've only done one internship. And then they go to work for that company. So they've never been able to broaden their base and see how the industry works outside of the one particular job. And I don't think that's good. I mean, for us, in the earlier days, we worked at 4, 5, 6, 7 or more radio stations usually, and moving around. And internships weren't really readily available anyway in those days. You had to kind of go out and do your own. And I think it's important to have them. If they are available, by all means, take them and use them to your advantage. This is where you can network, meet people. And that's the one thing you must do if you want to get into the business and succeed and to be known, is to network with people. That's so important. And internships will allow you to do that.
I remember the old days that you were allowed, like you said, work at a lot of different radio stations, as long as they weren't really in the listing area. Like you could work out in, for example, the Inland Empire, maybe work down in Palm Springs, maybe get something up in Santa Barbara. But if the stations were kind of heard in that particular market, you had to change your name. So you could, because it was conflict of interest. Now everybody's working everywhere. Even like the big time people like ESPN. You see a guy on ESPN, you see him on ABC. Of course, Ryan Seacrest, he's on. He could work at all 3 or 4 networks. It seems like it doesn't matter anymore. But the old days, that was a strict rule. Nope, you're working over there. You can't work over here, pal. So
it's true. It's very, very true.
Yeah. So,
and
but
we had. I know you worked in multiple amount of stations, and I worked at, I think, 5 or 6 before I left radio. And they all work differently. The stations work differently, and you take the best of each one and take it with you where you're going to the next job. And unfortunately, as you and I have discussed, there are bad radio stations, and most cases, I think you and I both have been taken out of one, at least, not through our own fault or talent, but it's the nature of the business. And again, that's an element of fear issue that comes back into play. You just can't think about it. You get up, you bounce back, and you move on to your next gig. And that's the important thing to do.
But I won't mention the guy's name, but I remember one time, because we talked about, hey, if you get into radio, especially as a disc jockey, air personality, or even a newscaster or sportscaster, regardless of a format change, I mean, there's going to be problems. A program director comes in, a new guy comes in, or a new woman, whatever, and they just want to bring their own people in. So I'm not saying your talent is bad, but so, you're going to, either radio or television, you are going to experience at least once, maybe twice or more, hopefully not more than 3 times, you're going to get fired. But there was one gentleman that I just fell off the chair laughing. He said, it's funny, I've been fired for many radio stations, but I've never had a station leave me, which was, remember Transtar? They moved up to Valencia And it's like they didn't fire him, but they said, well, you're gonna have to drive, another 100 miles. And he goes, well, I can't. You're leaving me. Usually they want you to leave, but here it was the opposite. So it's kind of funny. So, but like you said, sometimes you have no choice. You just gotta you keep your positive feeling going, move on to the next. But like you said, if you absorbed all that experience, it doesn't matter. You can find something else because you're building your network, you're meeting people, and you're hoping those people that you met down the line will help you find your next gig. It'd be radio, television, or film, or behind the scenes is a key too. So let's talk about unions and guilds. What's your experience with your take on when you had to join? I believe is it the what is the union for the sound engineers? They have a
We
separate.
have there's two actually. There's NABIT, which is National Association of Broadcast Engineers and Technicians, not as strong as the major one, which is IATSE. It's IA for short. That's International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. I belong to both. The IA is the one, the majority of all motion pictures that are unionized are with the IA. And that brings up a point too about unions, as you know too. In many cases in LA, particularly where most films are made, and radio is the second largest market in the country, you have to be a SAG-AFTRA member to be on radio, and you have to be in the guild IA to work on a film. Otherwise, you can't. The term is called closed shop, and you have 30 days to join or you won't have a job. And this is something too that I want to, this is really important about working on non-union gigs. And there are a lot of those out there, particularly reality shows. A lot of them are not unionized, and independent films are not unionized. The thing about that is you'll find that, unfortunately, not always, but a good portion of the time, producers will take advantage of the crews, and they'll work you extra hours. You may or may not get the overtime you deserve. Your lunch breaks may be short or non-existent, and breaks as well. And the unions help protect you in all of those areas. Plus, you have pension. And if you do work on a non-union gig, and I do encourage it, if it does come up and it gets your foot in the door, by all means do it. Make sure before you leave that production, before it ends, get a letter from the production office stating what you did and how many hours you worked, because that might be used to work for you when you do join a guild, and they'll apply it to the number of hours and blanket it in. It'd make a big, big difference for you in terms of your retirement and particularly your retirement funds down the road, if you worked on a lot of non-union gigs. So it's best to get a letter. Pay stub's not enough. It has to be a letter, perhaps on their letterhead if possible, and the name of the person with some authority that can sign it, stating the number of hours and what you did for that production company. And I would suggest that you put the letter yourself together and leave the blanks and let them fill them in. But that'll help a lot. And you and I both know you're in SAG-AFTRA, and I'm in the IA and NABIT, and there's pro and con to unions, but in the long run, you have a lot of protection.
That's the key, is protection, and you get the pension going on, and they really
Right.
you in the sense of making sure. That's why they're on strike right now. They're fighting to make sure, because things are going up, cost of living, and a lot of producers and directors are kind of moving things around to try to take advantage, if they can, any way to save a buck, to try to use your face or your voice on something without your approval or your agents or managers' approval. When I first joined AFTRA, like you said, 30 days, and it was a big chunk of money for me back then. And I think I joined in 1984, I believe. I don't know what the initiation is now, but I'm sure it's super duper high, because I think at the time when I joined, I think it was like $850, which was a lot of money back in 83 or 84. I don't know what do you know what it is? Have you heard anybody talk? It's got to be in the thousands, I'm sure.
It's in the thousands. I know the IA was up till a few years ago, it was like $5,000 initiation.
I think SAG-AFTRA now is probably $600 or maybe $7,500. So for those who do get that first union job, don't panic, because the unions now will work with you on a payment plan. When I had to get it, I had to give them $850 up front. It wasn't like, hey, can I give you $500 now? No, nope, $850, or or they'll have to take you off the air. And I was working for KFI, and I didn't want to screw that up, so I said, luckily I had it. Or I think I might have borrowed a couple $100 from a buddy, or maybe my dad. I don't know. But oh, speaking of KFI, I was digging this stuff up. Wow, how ironic! I just had it here. I don't know if you can see this. I found these old bumper
Oh,
stickers.
yes.
KFI, AM 640, and of course at the time they were owned by Cox Communications, and they also owned Coast 103.
Yeah.
I almost worked for Coast, but I ended up moving into a different direction. But Johnny K was programming both KFI and Coast, did a superb job. He's retired now too. But Johnny made Coast Coast 103 FM a big player. He kicked butt on that. And then KFI went from music to talk, and it became a very successful talk station. So anyway, but that was my experience joining after by itself. I joined and then joined SAG years later when I was doing TV and film. But well, I tell you, we've had a good chat here, John. I do want do a couple quick things here before we go. Any other suggestions to help students down the road?
I think take as many classes as they can at college. It's not all that expensive, community college particularly. Orange Coast College has one of the finest film television departments of anywhere, and I've taught at many schools and know what's out there. And you've got a very highly dedicated staff of both full and part-time instructors, and you should definitely utilize it and pick their brain, ask lots of questions. I know Mike won't mind. He'll tell you about SAG-AFTRA, and SAG-AFTRA used to be two separate unions, and then they merged about 4 or 5 years ago, which made a lot of sense. And those are things that you will have questions over, and you need to get them squared away before you venture out into the real world of working. But also, in terms of one thing we didn't talk about, I'll mention real quickly, resumes and cover letters. In a nutshell, use the website monster.com, which gives you many insights into how to write a good cover letter, a resume, and also interview. And in some cases, you might be being interviewed by one person, 1 or 2 or 3 people, or a full committee of 8 or 9 or 10. And it gives you insight and tips on how to do that. And it works differently for each type. So monster.com is a great way to get information. And really, the internet and Google is your resource for anything you want to know about all of it. Any position you want to know, whether it's camera work, directing, producing, sound work, voiceovers, the information is there. Just go for it and do your research and keep the passion up. And that's the main thing.
And don't burn a bridge. Keep keep those bridges open and build your network. That's
yes. Persistence is the key.
Absolutely. Couple quick things and we'll close out. I got to get your favorite fun story. You kind of hinted a little bit on TV, but I want to get your favorite fun story, your best day ever working behind the scenes on a TV show. And then after that, follow it up with your favorite radio story, and then we'll close out.
Trying to think what would be my favorite radio or television story. Did I tell you one before? I can't remember. We talked about some.
You just said you had some fun drop-ins, fun little sound effects during the scene.
Well, some of them are a little bit too racy to put on here that we've recorded. I've recorded them off of films, and put them on. But the actors would really get a kick out of it and enjoyed it so much. And we did it as much as we could. And some directors, believe it or not, doing comedy had no sense of humor. So we had to kind of not do it very often. But some of the directors they liked it as much too. It's interesting. Directors can either be very serious doing comedy, which is kind of strange in a way, or they can be real loose and have a good time, like with the rest of the crew and the actors. And it kind of goes too with the actors that are on the set, like a Tim Allen or a Paul Reiser is going to keep things a lot looser than somebody who's really uptight that comes out to do a scene. So you have to be kind of careful along those lines.
I'm sorry, go ahead. You're saying.
No, you were going to ask me about radio, and trying to think of something that really was unique. There were a lot of funny things that happened with clients here and there, but probably most of which should not be repeated on this video.
Yeah, maybe. I was going to think, I was thinking maybe you had a fun story with maybe Bruce Chandler or Dave Sebastian or one of those old time disc jockeys in the old days. Any fun stuff that maybe some of those remotes. So those remote broadcasts they do are always could be fun. Something funny happening like accidentally or something. So
I know the station I managed up north, we did a lot of remotes too, and those were fun. We never had any problems though, but they were a lot of fun to do. One thing I just want to stress again with radio and television and film, and for your students as to wherever they go in this industry, is to always think about having fun along the way. And that's the important thing that keeps you sane and focused. And it's important to have that mentality. Otherwise, you can get very frustrated at times.
absolutely. And one note, going back, I just thought of, I just remembered, I remember when you said that one actor used to get a little bit pissed off when you would do the drop-ins. Was it Powers Booth? Was he the one that he was working?
Powers Booth, I heard, yeah, he said, well, sound guys are always screwing around doing stuff.
Yeah, because he's such a serious guy, I guess, until you got to
Yeah.
know him, because he kind of opened up a little bit, huh?
Well, you know what? Just thought of one that is very funny. I'll try to make this quick.
Yeah,
I
take
was
your
doing a
time.
show called Empty Nest with Richard Mulligan and David Leisure. And if a lot of you probably don't even know who that is, David Leisure was one of the religious fanatics on the movie Airplane that gets whacked by one of the other actors.
He was
If
Joe
you saw him,
Izuzu.
you'd know him.
Joe Izuzu.
Anyway, what?
He was Joe Izuzu, the commercial.
Joe
Remember?
Isuzu, right. David's a nice guy and all. And he was, we think anyway, he was going through a divorce. Well, he's going through a divorce, and he was talking to this actress that was a guest actress on the show one day, and they were down on the stage. And actors have a tendency to forget that there's microphones hanging over them, and audio people are horrible voyeurs. We hear everything. So if we turn the mic on, we can hear it. They don't know we're hearing it, but we can hear it. So he's talking to her, and they're getting into a nice conversation. And I told the mixer I was working with at the time, I said, we need to play the theme from Love Story to the floor, which we had. So what happens is all of a sudden they go, da, 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 da. And all David said, well, you cruel bastards in audio.
It's so funny. Funny for you guys, not funny for him, obviously.
Yeah, not funny for him,
Yeah,
but it was funny.
I'm sure you have millions of stories like that, but we don't have any time left off. But hey,
Yeah.
John, I know you're busy. And one quick note on your retirement, what have you been doing to keep yourself occupied? Writing a book or playing Keno? What are you doing?
Well, playing Keno a lot, video Keno. No, I did write a book the last 5 years of my teaching. I wrote a book and used it in my classes. And my wife and I are just very busy doing lots of things, having dinner with friends, going out. We do have doctor's appointments here and there, nothing exciting to speak of, but go to a lot of concerts and plays. We like that.
It's nice keeping yourself occupied. Keep the brain, keep the blood flowing. That's all you can do.
Yes.
Good for you.
Mike, one thing you should mention is how the I'm busy, we're all busy started up.
Oh, we got to share that story. John and I are big fans of the movie Tombstone. And there is a scene with Kurt Russell, Bill Paxton, and our buddy Sam Elliott, where the sheriff comes in asking Sam Elliott's character, Virgil Earp, you're a lawman. Do you want to help out? And then Virgil goes, well, he says, I'm busy. And then was it Kurt Russell takes the pull cue, boom, boom. Yeah. We're all busy.
Well, we use that all the time on each other, which adds humor even to our conversations.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, when I'm trying to get a hold of John, he's so busy. And I said, John, he goes, yeah, I'm busy. We're all busy, so inside joke. But if you ever see the movie Tombstone, you'll get it.
Highly recommended if they haven't watched it.
The best movie. I'm sure a lot of my students have seen it. But and that scene, by the way, was ad-libbed by Kurt Russell. Then he hit the pull cue. It wasn't in the script. So, and you're supposed to follow the scripts, right, John? Both TV and film, and some of these actors improvise.
Well, as scripted, but a lot of actors don't, and they sometimes get into trouble. And other times, the writers, they don't care; they like it.
It wasn't better. Yeah, Dustin Hoffman, didn't he improvise that one line? Hey, I'm walking here, in Midnight Cowboy. That was so. Even though it's a great scene and very efficient, but I think the writers get pissed off. They don't quit going around. Keep your mind on my script. Don't screw up and do any improvisation. But But Dustin Hoffman goes, "Hey, it's a great scene at work. Let's do it." And Hoffman was kind of a do his own thing anyway, from what I heard from a lot of people that worked with Dustin Hoffman. So anyway, good stuff here, Mr. Hart. I appreciate your time, my friend. Enjoy your days of busyness, because we're busy. We're all busy. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a good chat with John Hart, a man that's done a lot of stuff in the business. And John, again, I appreciate your time, my friend.
Mike, it's been a pleasure, and I'll send the invoice to your home address. Okay.
Absolutely. I look forward to it, as I'm getting ready to move, by the way. So feel free to send it to the same address. Yeah. So
Okay, will do.
okay, thanks, man. Be well. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
you too.